Hello and welcome to The Pledge. This week, the American entrepreneur Elon Musk successfully launched the world's most powerful rocket, which sent one of his Tesla sports cars into orbit. The car is driven by a mannequin spaceman and has David Bowie blasting out of the stereo and could last 1 billion years. We applied to have Greg Dyke strapped into the driver's seat, but unfortunately, our request was turned down. So he'll be back with us next week. Coming up on today's show, Carol thinks free speech is under threat. Majid says President Trump is right about the NHS. Nick argues the police need to sort out their priorities. And Rachel is encouraging us to take a break from our phones. But first, it's me. The suffragettes. They fought a long, hard and bitter fight, often resorting to a legal means to get our voices heard. Us women owe them our respect and gratitude. And this week, as we celebrated 100 years since some women won the vote, we've seen calls for them to receive a pardon from the government for the crimes they committed. I disagree. These radical ladies were strong and ballsy, determined to achieve change. They knowingly broke the law to make their point. Controversy and criminality was a deliberate part of their strategy to be heard. They wore their convictions as a badge of honour, and they were proud of them. If we want to show these ladies gratitude, we should do so by continuing their equality agenda, not by diluting their battle and whitewashing history. Pardon me for being so bold, but somehow I think the suffragettes would agree with me.
I'm not sure the suffragettes would agree with you, but the suffragists definitely would. And the difference is that the suffragists believed in enforcing change within the law, and the suffragettes broke the law in order to achieve the milestone that we celebrated this week. And so actually I disagree, not with you, I completely agree with you, but I disagree with the Fawcett Society that campaigns for women's rights and female equality on this subject. And I just want to add one personal note, which is that my distant ancestor is Millicent Garrett Fawcett. My mother is born Charlotte Fawcett. My daughter is named after her. So I'm on the side of the suffragists here.
Never ends with you, Johnson, does it? You've got Turkish grandparents.
We've got the mummy who died of syphilis.
Cheddar Man.
I know, Cheddar Man. OK.
Unbelievable.
So let's just read out a quote. I think the Fawcett Society's got this wrong. And this is from Sam Smethers, who is the head of it. And she says, suffragette activism was for a noble cause and many of them became political prisoners. It would be a fitting tribute to pardon them now. They made such sacrifices so that we could all enjoy the rights we have today in any meaningful sense of the word. They were not criminals. I'm afraid they were criminals. And I don't think Amber Rudd, our Home Secretary, and a woman who has benefited from what they did, I don't think she should pardon them.
Do you know, Jeremy Corbyn this week was him who said that if he got into power, he would issue a pardon for all suffragettes. And this really annoys me with... I'm sick of politicians apologising for past deeds, because it's actually... It's virtue signalling, it's totally self-indulgent. They think it makes them look good, so they say. So he's piggybacking on women this week and on suffragettes to try and get some personal publicity, which the Labour Party currently desperately needs. But, you know, you can't keep apologising for stuff that you didn't do. You remember Tony Blair started it years ago by apologising to the Irish for the potato famine.
He didn't apologise for Iraq, though, did he?
No, but it had nothing to do. The government's had nothing to do with the potato famine. It was 3 successive, disastrous potato crops that the government actually tried to help with. And then, do you remember Gordon Brown did it? He tried to give a pardon to all World War I deserters who'd been shot.
Ken Livingstone for slavery as well, London Mayor for slavery.
It's a pointless, futile exercise, which is only designed to make them look good.
On the note of apologies, Amber Rudd has responded to the situation. Let's see what she had to say.
It's something that I will look at. We have done things like this in the past, like with Alan Turing and Turing's law. It's quite complicated because there are elements of law which can't just be overstepped because we've changed our views on things. But I have said I will take a look at it.
Now, on the note of pardons, I've just got to clarify something. A pardon is not the same as a quashed conviction. So the Turing situation, Alan Turing, and the law no longer exists. It's no longer a criminal offence to be gay, for example.
Yes, just because that was Alan Turing's case. Remember, he faced prosecution. He was behind the great Enigma code breaker, and that was just to remind all the viewers.
So that law no longer exists. But what the suffragettes were often charged and convicted for was things like criminal damage, and that still a crime. So the pardon isn't saying what they did is no longer a crime. It's just saying we understand the situation back then and what you did and the anger for why you did it, and therefore we're going to forgive you for the offence, but it still recognises it was offence. So I, for one, let me just say, believe they should be pardoned, though I understand, Michelle, your reasoning, because you want to remember their radical legacy. But between 1906 and 1914, 1,300 women
You think
they did it.
were arrested.
But Madge, they did it because they knew it was illegal and they would get publicity and results from this. So to pardon them actually, in a way, negates what they did.
True, I get that reasoning, but I just think we should recognise publicly that they aren't criminals and they never should have been criminals.
But they were criminals. They dropped bombs.
But the law was unjust.
They dropped bombs. They set fire to places. And if we had a momentum mob today...
I think you two are on, argue the same point for different reasons.
If we had a momentum mob today running riot in the streets, we would expect the cops to arrest them and charge them.
If you break an unjust law, I think you're ethically on the right side of history.
But the laws were just. You can't go and slash a painting in the National Gallery and expect the law to be pardoned for it, whoever you are.
Well, I mean, I just want to bring Rachel back into this. So from Cheddar Man through to Turkish barons through to Millicent Garrett Fawcett, and we see one of you munching kangaroo's testicles in the jungle and another one caught in the... How your relatives must be proud of you two. So proud. I don't agree. I don't think there should be a pardon, but I want to actually turn it around. If Emmeline Pankhurst was here now, let's ask you, if Emmeline do you think she would say, yep, I've got us where we want to be, it was worth it? Do you feel suitably liberated in everything that they were driving for? Would you say, because I find that more interesting in a way, do you think she's achieved everything she set out to do?
Not everything.
So
no,
what hasn't she done?
I think there's still some inequalities where we could be focusing, but I feel quite strongly that the suffragettes that chose to take the actions that they chose, they did. They wore it as a badge of honour. They were proud of what they did. And I think, actually, would they want our government's, like, forgiveness? No, I think they'd probably stick two fingers up with it and crack on doing whatever it was the next cause that they felt strongly about. So I just don't think that they would want what we're trying to offer them.
Do you feel suitably...
I think this is a stupid distraction from the real issues, and there are far more important battles to be fought and won for women's equality. I mean, I'd like to, you know, on equal pay, for example, I know Michelle has got interesting views about, you know, men and women should not just be paid the same because they don't often do the same jobs. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. But the Fawcett Society has said that on current rates of progress, it will take 100 years for women and men to be on equal, to eliminate the gender pay gap.
Paternity leave, that's how you fix it, because that's one of the major causes for unequal pay.
It's also the sort of job.
Wasn't Millicent Fawcett the one who was less radical? Emmeline Pankhurst was very radical. She was actually a man-hater. She actually said the only thing men were not good for was she said that they were carriers of venereal disease. That's how she slated all men.
I would hate my oppressors as well.
Let me finish the point. Millicent Fawcett was the one who fought it. She fought a calm, non-violent battle.
That's what I said, within the law.
And also, the reason she appealed to people was that she was campaigning about the 5 million working-class men who didn't have votes, as well as women. So I think it was her who fought the campaign.
I don't think man-hater is a correct term at this time to describe her as, because if there was a law today in the United Kingdom that said all people of colour can't vote, or if all overpaid white men in suits can't vote, for example...
That's a little unfair. I'm sitting here quietly.
No, but you'd be understandably angry at your oppressors. And so, you know, you've got to contextualise her activism and her remarks. She may well have hated men at a time when men said she didn't have the right to a voice or to express herself democratically.
When she says things, men were little more than carriers of venereal disease, she wasn't keen on them.
Of course she was upset. I mean, look, I'd be upset if I was institutionally disenfranchised. I'd be very angry. I'd probably take direct action. In their defence, they didn't kill anyone, and they deliberately set out not to harm human beings. All of the criminal damage that they engaged in, and it was criminal damage, was against property, not people. And if
not true. They attacked policemen and they attacked anyone.
Well,
that's not true.
They smashed windows during protests, they were force-fed. They were force-fed in jail because they were protesting for the right to vote. I mean, Emmeline Pankhurst's daughter was arrested simply for disrupting a political rally. And I know you don't like snowflakes that do that.
Madge and Carol, what do you think the suffragettes would be campaigning now for equal pay? What do you think they would be fighting for?
Yes.
But I'd be interested, because you mentioned, because I don't know necessarily that a woman can always make the same as a bloke, and we've seen this in the row involving the state broadcaster. Listen, if you're sitting there, and I mean this in no derogatory sense, if you're merely in a phone centre and you're giving quotes for an insurance company and a bloke is sat next to him, I find that very, very difficult. You should be earning the same. If, however, you're a man who brings more experience, or you're a woman who brings more experience, then I don't see... But you've got views on that. Rachel was saying you've got some strong...
I feel really strongly about the equal pay conversation, because I think it's really very quickly dismisses that there's a gender thing. And what I'm always interested in is anybody doing the same job with the same experience at the same level should have the same pay.
Totally.
And it's illegal to not do that.
Totally.
But I just find this generalised, man earns this, woman earns this. You've got to get in. Yeah, you've got to get into it.
You don't mind I get double the rate for this.
What we say
never
about
mind about that.
I just got myself a triple pay rise, so don't worry about it.
OK, so before we get into all of that, it's me. The Oxford English Dictionary recently inserted a new definition for the word snowflake. Quote, overly sensitive or offended person. It should have added, PC zealots determined to silence debate and close minds. Why is it these snowflakes think they can intimidate and abuse people with differing views, yet still see themselves as enlightened liberals showing the rest of us ignorant morons the way? Barely a week goes by without them demanding that people and organisations change the way they operate because they've decided it's offensive. Jacob Rees-Mogg, speaking at a students' rally, was offensive, apparently, so they attacked him and called him a Nazi. You want a sensible discussion on immigration or gender? The snowflakes slate you as a bigot. Not a day goes by without campuses shutting down free speech, not understanding that words won't hurt them. And this isn't just students. These snowflakes dress up their rabid intolerance as tolerance, believing they have a monopoly on morality. And God help people with views that differ from theirs, because they will destroy them.
That's Carol whinging about whinges again, I see.
Well, I wouldn't quite say whinging, Magic, but, you know.
It's a serious problem. I agree that this is a problem on the left, but I often like to say that I believe in rebooting our politics, and I sort of talk of a control left, alt-right, delete, because actually it's really interesting that the far left and the far right, and the alt-left and the alt-right, whichever phrases we want to use for the soft and hard elements of these two fringes, they kind of share so many traits. They are equally triggered by each other when they say things they don't like. And it's not just far-left activists, such as those that disrupted the Jacob Rees-Mogg speech recently on campus.
Has been of late, but anyway.
But no, let's not forget. In fact, we can watch it. Let's have a look at what they did to the Mayor of London. So what we're seeing here, this is the Mayor of London attempting to give a speech at the Fabian Society, and that chap there is somebody that represents the so-called white Pendragons. Now, putting aside the Pendragons and refer to the Welsh mythology, this guy wants to, I think there's some former EDL people involved, but what they want to do is ban the Fabian Society that was hosting the Mayor of London, a rather centrist or centre-left organisation, and what they also call for is that the Mayor of London shouldn't be in office simply because he happens to profess a Muslim faith.
He's not being menacing and he's not being bad.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that, but he's clearly triggered. And one of the things he said to the press was that he doesn't think the mayor should be a mayor because he's Muslim. There's many things I disagree with the mayor on, not least his banning the Beachbody Ready advert, which I think was another example of being triggered. But, you know, I think what we're seeing is the rise of polarisation. We're seeing these organisations on the fringes mimicking each other in their desire to shut opposition down. Though I agree with you, I am very worried about the what I'm calling this kind of control left tendency to dictate speech, to label people. I've been labelled by them myself, and I don't expect it coming from people that consider themselves progressive, who historically have believed and claimed to believe in freedom of speech.
Okay. Nick?
Well, let me just read, just for people who aren't aware, of course, this was, as you rightly said, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Let's just read you what the Bristol anti-fascists who were involved decided to say about this. They said the University of West England decided to allow a speech from Jacob Rees-Mogg to take place, and I'm going to read it as written. A person known for his homophobic and anti-abortion beliefs are well known and documented. As anti-fascists, feminists and people who partake in the class struggle, we felt it was appropriate of us to disrupt his speech. Our disruption was a complete success, but we still feel appalled on how a university which recently launched an anti-Islamophobic campaign and is voted one of the friendly LGBT universities allowed such a figure to spout out his vitriol. So that's got out there, which is quite important. We live in troubling times, and I take both your points because it is coming from both sides. I hear what you say, that there probably wasn't that same element of violence and aggression as we saw with the mayor. Yeah, indeed. We live in very troubling times. But unfortunately, all the time we have either central or local governments or health boards or universities who don't have the backbone and don't have the nerve to stand up and say, look, we do not not accept it. We are going to allow this person to speak. We are going to allow this. We want to hear your views. I think we're in a bad place. And lastly, when it comes to universities, and I've said this before, this is where mostly young people's minds should be opened up. And it's very, very healthy to hear counter views to the one you go. And the idea that we're closing debate down on whether it's to do with Israel, whether it's to do with homosexuality, whether it's to do with Cecil Rose, is to me wholly wrong.
But isn't it a contradiction in terms that university people are demanding safe spaces within universities so that they don't have to hear arguments they don't like, and yet on the other hand they're perfectly prepared to go and use menace or violence against people who are speaking their sincerely held beliefs? And I think that's the problem with this, and I think it's a tyrannical political correctness that is seeping through society now, where ordinary decent people are being made to feel that what they think is wrong or immoral.
I had this the other day when I went on another programme, and we were talking about the President's Club, and I pointed out, I thought quite calmly, that the women who were hostesses at the President's Club acted under their own free will. Nobody forced them to do it. They weren't passive victims. I was taken down. It was horrible. And I think that if you deviate at all publicly now from the agreed Antifa Me Too narrative, I mean, I've got a lot of time for what's happened in Me Too, but I'm not completely on board the bus, and I think you have to point out flaws in the argument that not all men are perpetrators, not all women are victims, we all have agency, all those things. You're not allowed to say the obvious, logical things anymore.
There are certain subjects that speech is being closed down on. Race is one, agenda is one, immigration is one. Michelle, what do you think?
Well, I feel very strongly about this because I remember when I ran for Parliament, I've told this story many times, in June last year, the abuse that me and my volunteers received, and it was all from, I'm not saying it was all Labour supporters are like this, but all of the abuse that I received was from Labour supporters, and it was horrific. And I had volunteers quit because they were intimidated. I had people that didn't dare have a poster of my campaign in their window in case they had their windows put through. And all we were doing is campaigning against all parties for an alternative.
And of course, that's why these guys do it, because they know that they're going to frighten people like your volunteers to quit, that they're going to make it happen, and they're going to shut down what you're saying.
Yeah, but
that's how they do it.
They do it. So, like, if I think of the Rees-Mogg thing, they're all there in their balaclavas. Yeah. They don't even have the guts to show their face. They cover their face.
Exactly.
And I think that media is pandering to this narrative, because if you go, I think pandering? Because what I think is you will have an agenda now that's an acceptable agenda. And I think that if you...
Can I give an example of that? Can I give an example of that, Michelle? I saw a headline in a newspaper that shall not be named that covered one of these protests where the far left and the far right clashed. When they cover those protests, they say anti-fascists clashed with far right. No. These aren't anti-fascists. I'm anti-fascist. Everyone around this table probably is, I should hope. These are far-left extremists clashing with far right, or whatever phrase you want to use for them. And so to name one in a positive sense, that these are anti-fascists against the far right, again, is a bias that I think we've got to overcome. We've got to begin to be able to comprehend that people on the far left can also be extremists. They wear masks and they engage in violence.
What scares me about our universities now, there seems to be only one way of thinking. And there was another story this week which kind of illustrates this, where lots of universities banned lots of right-wing tabloids. They banned the Sun, they banned the Mail, they banned the Express. They don't want people reading right-wing papers. Now, how, you said before, universities are supposed to be...
the student unions did, not the universities.
Okay, so they're not having right-wing papers, I think. And, as you said, universities are supposed to be citadels of learning where you evolve.
And you are challenged. The idea is you are challenged.
Yeah. And I find it... And what scares me is these people who are following, they only say one argument in university, and it's the left argument. So these people are going to go out into the world, they're going to go into politics and media and industry, and they're going to take these aggressive convictions.
And what's happening as a result of this is that everybody is being driven to the extremes. I mean, for example, the Daily Mail did a piece about Anna Soubry this week, in which Andrew Pearce, who's a great journalist, called Anna Soubry a traitor for having said that the party was being held ransom by, 35 hard Brexiters. Now, she has a right to say that. I suppose Andrew Pearce has a right to call her a traitor, but actually, using the word traitor is actually quite inflammatory. It's like saying collaborator. It's like saying...
lots of people feel
but what I'm not saying is we should shut down Andrew Pearce. He had every right to write it. But my point is that We are being driven by the lack of a kind of centre ground. We're all being driven to these extremes, which is why both sides are trying to shut each other down.
Yes.
Everybody's got to calm down and stand up for free speech.
Calm down and stand up. We're going to be busy.
Let's all calm down until we speak about the NHS, because it's one of those debates that gets us all quite impassioned. But this week, the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, clashed with Donald Trump, no less, on Twitter after the US president attacked our National Health Service, how dare he, saying it is going broke and not working. Now, Mr. Hunt responded that he was proud to be from a country where all get care no matter the size of their bank balance. But Donald Trump is correct, though not for the reasons he would like. Our NHS is failing. Longer life expectancy and increased demand has put the service under great pressure. But successive governments have kicked fixing the issue into the long grass. Now, there is a way forward, but it takes political courage. We must all contribute more if we want our NHS to survive. And I reckon the majority of the majority of the public would support this. Surveyable. This week, this summer, we mark the 70th anniversary of the NHS. As we do, a health service free at the point of use should make us all proud. But to maintain it, we all have to play our part.
Have I given my hand away? Do you think by my reaction?
Let's just
So, for the viewers who aren't up to speed with the tweets, a bit more reading aloud from me. It starts with one from President Trump. The Democrats are pushing for universal healthcare while thousands of people are marching in the UK because their as in universal healthcare, system is going broke and not working. Dems, as in Democrats, want to greatly raise taxes for really bad and non-personal medical care. No thanks. To which, last one I read, I promise, Jeremy Hunt, Health Secretary, responds, I may disagree with claims made on that march, but not one of them wants to live in a system where 28 million people have no cover. He means the US. NHS may have challenges, but I'm proud to be from the country that invented universal coverage, where all get care no matter the size of their bank balance. I had to chuckle as I saw this all go through, because about 2 months ago, those on the left were saying the NHS is done for, the NHS isn't working, the NHS is on the point of failure. It's all. And then, of course, their great bogeyman, President Trump, comes out and says that, and they say, oh, no, oh, my God, how are we going to distance ourselves? He was only saying what they had been saying.
That's why I said he's right.
And he is right. Yeah. Let's say, and I'm happy to say here and now, the NHS has actually saved the life of one member of my family, and I would imagine it's helped for each and every one. It is an absolute, it is the crown jewels. It is the biggest jewel of our crown jewel. It is part of being British. However, where we part, and I've done a bit of research, is fixing the issue, we need to contribute more. Majid. It's all right for intelligentsia like you to pound out a few more quid. There are people watching this who are on Struggle Street. Hold on one second. It's just, we are speaking in the week in which most people's council tax will go up by perhaps about 100 quid. This is money these folk have to find. So sitting there in your very smart suit, I envy you that one. You went on about my suit. You've got a lovely suit. Oh, we'll pay a bit more. No, this is what we do. Lastly, do you know the money that is wasted in the NHS? It costs about £2.5 billion a week. Let's just pause for the viewers. 2.5. Imagine that piled up. That's each week. And why is it that? Because in one instance, we charge £1,500 for a £2 pot of moisturiser. No one ever does anything about that.
We didn't waste £2 billion a week. It cost £2 billion.
Hold on. And another one, a pack of 12 rubber gloves that would normally cost 35p is being paid £16.47. There's plenty of money there. We just need to spend it better.
You know, Nick, you talk about, and I completely agree with you, and I can give you some more figures about the wastage, 160 million quid on
You'll see my surgical gloves and
that patients don't need, 1.3 billion on negligence claims, but anyway, 7.6 billion on things like expensive toilet rolls. But anyway, that's by the by. We all talk about how much we love the NHS, but all of us are guilty of abusing it, and we're guilty because 8 million missed hospital appointments.
DNAs.
Hang on a second. 8 million missed hospital appointments. Every hospital appointment costs the NHS 120 quid. That's £1 billion a year. 9 million people are sent away from A&E every year with just guidance, which means they didn't have to bother A&E in the first place. They could have gone to their local pharmacist, they could have gone to their GP, they could have dialed 111 and got help and assistance. So, you know, when we say we love the NHS, if we love it, we've got to stop abusing it and treating it properly.
Can I just put some context here? Okay? I mean, very theatrical, Nick, well done. Right?
It's good.
But I've got to say, so the Commonwealth Fund investigated all the health services in 11 Western countries, and they found
we came out top,
2 years in a row that our NHS came out top.
Not for outcomes.
But it doesn't mean
Yes,
it doesn't mean
exactly,
there isn't
you're
room for
right.
improvement. And actually, it's because we have such a robust debate around it is one of the reasons why
Our
it's
cancer survival care
well
rate is one of the worst in
performing.
the world,
In terms of percentage of GDP, we actually spend less than the Americans do on their privatised system. The Americans spend 16.6% of their GDP, and we only spend 9.9% of ours.
But the public should... The public,
Last thing, Carol, just last thing,
Okay.
I promise.
Okay.
The money. You spoke of the money. Yes, it's a nice suit, thank you. It's a man that makes the suit. But what I'd say is actually...
Oh, yeah, it's a handmade suit.
Well, I'd say
Hello.
it's the Baker Commission recommendation, officially, that looked into this, and they found that if you add merely 1 penny on our national insurance contributions, we could help contribute to the NHS, and 83% of the public, Nick...
It's the Barker Commission.
Yeah,
Barker,
Barker.
yeah.
Sorry,
Kate-
Barker.
Kate
yeah.
Barker.
Yeah.
That's right. I thought you were going to interrupt me there.
No.
Thank you. 83% of the public back raising taxes.
You
on this.
wouldn't have
Yeah.
to do that
Yeah.
if we stopped the wastage at source, and that's the point. If people were a bit more
Yeah.
considerate of the service, there wouldn't be as
And
much...
that feeds into what I want to say, which is about everybody thinks well, we all pay for the NHS, but it's free at the point of use.
But it's not free.
It's not free. We all pay for it. And in Germany and in other countries, they have a contributory system whereby you see on your tax return or on your payslip how much,
Oh, yes.
14%, 20% of this has gone into your healthcare system. As a result, they have a far more efficient healthcare system. For example, in Germany, where there isn't a waiting list. You know, you have a hospital bed because people know what they're paying for, and they make demands on their health service. Therefore, the 1,500 pot moisturiser issue will not arise in Germany because people are aware of what they're paying for, and they want value, and they demand it, and they get it. Go to Europe. They spend about the same as we do, about 11%, which is not a lot more than 9.9% on their healthcare systems, and they don't have perma-crisis.
Michelle.
My take on this, and I love the NHS, obviously, we use it, and, you know, I want it to continue. I wouldn't be comfortable paying any more money at the moment towards the NHS, and that is because I think that there are structural inefficiencies within the NHS. So, yes, there's examples of creams and all the rest of it, but I think it's way, way deeper than this, and I think that somebody needs to have the courage to say, look, the NHS, currently one of the biggest, if not the biggest employer in our country, we have so many people. They're wildly inefficient at deploying IT services that could add efficiency, for example. They've wasted billions of pounds on failed IT projects, I can assure you of that. And actually, what somebody needs to do is have the courage to pick this thing up and look at it and go, right, it was created, you know, decades ago. What we need to do now, 70 years, we need to look at this system. Is it still fit for purpose? Have we got the right people in the right places? And I personally would argue not. But I would suspect, not being an expert in this, I would suspect that what that would mean is potential redundancies in back office staff, administrative staff, mid-level management. And I don't believe there is a politician in the land that has the courage, because it's such a political football. I don't think any politician in the land has the courage to follow that through.
Well, wait, the Lib Dems are saying put 1p on national insurance to pay for the
you're missing my
NHS.
point. You're missing my point. I'm saying I don't want to pay any more until the system
A lot of people,
is effective.
73% of the country are prepared to pay more.
83%.
83%.
Yeah, but I'm not.
So you're yes, well, you're
I'm
in a minority.
but I'm explaining why. I'm
Are
not.
you
I'm
worried
saying.
about my surgical gloves?
Well, it's
No, seriously, I mean, it is a waste. I know.
It's a bit like the EU debate, though, for me. It doesn't have to be either or. The EU is inefficient, it is bureaucratic, it's red tape laden, but at the same time...
Reform from within.
Yeah, like Westminster.
So why would you do something more like
we have an
that?
unelected House of Lords. It doesn't mean we scrap Parliament, right? So our NHS may not necessarily be functioning as efficiently as it should be, but we can do both. We can add a penny to the national insurance contributions while making savings elsewhere.
But you might not need to. If you structure this effectively, you probably won't need to raise pennies.
Michelle, you
think
always
you will,
talk
because there's
about
been real
this as
cuts.
if no one has ever actually looked at the inefficiencies and looked at a management overhaul. They do this constantly, every
But they
single
do
year.
it successfully, because I can point you to billions of pounds
well,
of
why
wasted
don't they
IT
ask
projects.
you to go in and reform the NHS?
Hello, if anyone's watching, I am available.
Rachel, you
I'll
know,
do a
good
half
luck,
price
girl.
rate.
Listen,
I'll
Rachel,
go in there.
I get what you're saying, but, you know, £7.6, the procurement thing is a particularly big thing, because since the NHS started, they've been buying stuff in the same way. So one hospital will pay 66 pence for a tight rope, another one will pay 20 pence. Same for wheelchairs, crutches, all the rest of it. That is not hard to sort out.
It doesn't have have to be either or.
But also what I think would be useful, if when we all get treatment in the NHS, we know, you talked about it being free, it's not free. If all of us were given a bill, not to pay, but to show how much it costs.
Good plan.
And it would give us an idea, and then we won't abuse it in future. If we tell people it's 120 quid every time you don't bother to turn up for an appointment, and also, 20% of all hospital appointments are wasted because of people's selfishness, because they just can't pick up the phone.
It's time to pull the plug on that healthy debate. You're watching The Pledge on Sky News. And after the break, I'll be explaining how the police need to sort out their priorities. It is a sad but true fact that crime across the entire country is on the increase, in some instances dramatically so. Fatal stabbings in London are at a 6-year high. Gun crime offences at their highest for 5 years. It would therefore seem to be fair to suggest there's plenty of work for our police to do. So, can anyone work out what the hell they're doing by seeking to criminalise a motorist if they're doing 1 mile an hour? Yes, that's 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Admittedly, that idea was dropped. Or raiding parents' homes if they're paying the bill for their child if they're caught sexting. Well, it's time to stop this cop-out and go after real criminal behaviour, not the low-lying, tick-box-filling, easy pickings that alienate the police from those who deserve to be policed.
I mean, I largely agree with what you say, but I treat these new figures with caution. You know, remember, there's a big history between Theresa May and the police, and it goes back to 2010, when at the Police Federation conference, she actually told them she was cutting their budgets by 20%, and she also told them to stop pretending that there were only people being picked on, the way she was talking about how the cuts were affecting everyone. But what happened subsequently is she did started because she cut their ranks when she was in charge for 5 years by 19,000 coppers. And what happened was the crime rate went one way, it went down. So the public, in the public's eye, she was right to do that. So the police hated Theresa May and still do. But also this week, there's been a caution put out there. And the Office for National Statistics, who publish a lot of these crime figures, say we have to treat police research crime stats with caution, because there's a new way of recording them, which might look like it's higher, but it's not really. And they said the things that we should be looking at are the crime survey figures, crime survey stats, which they say are far more reliable. And those stats this year say crime has gone down by 10%, and in the past, since 2010, crime has gone down by 40%. However, what they both agree with, before you go to your notes, what they both agree with is that knife crime and gun crime has gone up. But I suppose where I do take issue, where you say the police are they've got to start dealing with they've got to stop dealing with low-level crime. They're not dealing with low-level crime now. Burglaries, you know, car thefts, or what they call low-level crime, are the things that affect most people's lives. They have made it clear. They've made so many public statements this year that they don't have the cops to take care of those.
Which is why I question why they're worried about parents whose kiddies might be sexting, which of course is wrong. I'm not saying or a motor. But 1 mile an hour. I know they dropped it, but it shows the lunacy of the idea. Just to say, the Office for National Statistics put out the figures. They don't indicate which ones we should say, whether it should be almost customer satisfaction. Let me ask you a question. When did you last see a copper in your London street?
Well, that's the point I was about to make. Loath to say I agree with Nick, but...
It was in vogue a few years ago. It was
indeed,
in vogue.
but for a very different Nick. I think that the issue is that actually we have the lowest police, in terms of numbers, the lowest numbers of officers on duty since figures began in 1996. And that, for me, is very worrying, because I often talk about the rise in violent crime. It affects largely inner city areas with ethnic minority teenagers. By and large, it's black on black or brown on brown crime. And these are teenagers stabbing each other to death over postcodes. One of the things I think the most effective way of stopping that is having bobbies on the beat and neighbourhood policing, community policing. For me, it's just common sense. So Theresa May's cuts, 18% in real terms, 20% overall, but 18% in real terms when you figure in inflation, have led to a situation where the police can't actually do the job that they're most effective at. I remember growing up seeing a bobby on the beat. And, you know, it's a humanising situation to be in, where they know the names of their local business people and communities, and the communities know them.
Imagine, come on. If you've got two gangs, so you've just said it's a black on black or brown. If you've got two gangs of kids that are going to go to some kind of war over a postcode, Are you honestly telling me that two bobbies on the beat, A, they're going to respect and listen to, and B, are going to stop that?
But that's not... The thing is, it's a long-term relationship-building exercise. What it does is it increases community intelligence, which helps solve the crime because it increases trust between the police on the street in that local area and the communities. And again, though I loathe to say I agree with Nick, I also am loath to say I agree with Jeremy Corbyn, which I never thought I'd hear myself say. You have to listen to what he had to say on this.
After 7 years of cuts, will the Prime Minister today admit that her government's relentless cuts to police, probation services and social services have left us less safe? The reality is, you can't have public safety on the cheap.
And really, I mean, he's right.
And any policing expert knows it's not immediate.
Yeah.
You stop the funding, you don't see the problem the next afternoon. It takes a while for the community to realise there aren't coppers on the beat, there aren't the police around, and young people who might be attracted into gangs. I don't think Majid was immediately suggesting two bobbies will stop them, but that's the problem. Rachel, you've been quiet for too long.
I went to a church meeting the other day because they're going to close my local police station in Notting Hill, and actually there's only going to be one police station in the borough, and that's going to be, I think, in Chelsea. And, you know, lots and lots of locals came to this meeting, and the police had to get up and explain, you know, they had been cut back to the bone, but they also explained they police in a different way now. And we were all... It was really quite amazing to hear. They say things like... you know, people don't actually come into the police station anymore to report things. I had my phone pinched the other day, and I actually did go to the police station, and I sat there thinking, well, that's not right. They say that, you know, they don't have so many community officers on the streets. And then they said that they want to use the internet much more to do local policing. They say people are reporting things on Twitter.
Oh,
and they said, no, but then they proceeded to say that the way they dealt with the offence or the potential crime was just as effective as having a local police station and bobbies on the beat.
Tell that to the victims of the 20 people who were stabbed.
That's what they said. And they are closing the police station.
I have huge respect for the police, but they haven't done themselves any favours this year.
No.
They've been involved in some stupid
Twitter
fiascos.
spats.
Well, not just that, but also the Dodgem incident, the painting nails incident. They're not there to raise money for charity. They're there to actually police and catch criminals.
Absolutely.
And I think the way many of the public feel they've been led down by them is in this low-level crime, with burglaries and car crime. The things that affect us all the most. Thankfully, not many of us are, and hopefully never will be, by serious crime, by gun crime. Hopefully.
We do have to acknowledge a lot of it isn't their fault. There is this kind of silly Twitter spat stuff they're involved in.
They bring it a bit on themselves, though, Maggie.
Yes,
they bring a bit on themselves.
But the cuts, they didn't bring it on themselves, and that is by far and large the biggest factor in why we're seeing a rise in violent crime.
What Nick was saying was there has to be a hierarchy of police effort when it comes to different sorts of crime. Yeah. And me maybe having my phone pinched on the streets of Notting Hill didn't require a panda car to chase after a woman in her 60s, which is in fact what happened. And I was very, very grateful. Thank you very much, Notting Hill Police, and I recovered my phone. But car crime, for example, bicycle crime, forget it.
Okay.
Break-ins.
Yeah.
I mean,
actually, we mustn't forget break-in, because that will lead us to the next thing. Don't ever leave, because if criminals start getting away with breaking, it will just get ever. I think they would always
they don't want it, but you know they have to. It's a bit like the CPN. It's a bit like the Crown Prosecution Service. The police have to have a reasonable expectation of identifying the suspect. If they don't, they are not going to waste police time on it.
The one thing we haven't said, which I'm sure we'd all agree, is that sadly, in many instances, they've become an adjunct to the social services departments, because a lot of it is emotional health care issues with these poor souls who actually should have some kind of, if not residential care. Note that they are the default position. So I know a police team, a bloke and a woman, had lost their entire day because a guy was having an unfortunate episode in a supermarket, and that was their entire... So there's two people we take off the front line of policing, and that can't be right. That's where you look to social services.
And I think where the public lose patience with the police when they talk about not having enough money, they always seem to have enough money to pursue dead or dying politicians.
Well, this is true.
When they make accusations. You know, that guy Nick, who accused everyone in Operation Midland, which cost £2.5 million, by the way. It turns out that this week he's being charged with crimes of paedophilia and he was actually abusing kids at the time he was accusing people like Leon Britton.
It is
alleged. Yes. So you know they always have time to set up a task force for hate crime, but they don't seem to have enough money to chase people who are burgling a house. And I think that's where the public lose sympathy with the cops sometimes.
Yeah, but I think we do need to go easy on them as well, because you both mentioned the Dodgems, the police at Dodgems. And I defend them for that, actually. That was
What?
Yeah, I do. That was in Hull.
I know it was.
That's a fair that's happened
That's
every
why
week.
she's defending it.
No, it happens every week in October.
She was on the Dodgems with him.
I wasn't. But I know the hours that those guys work. That fair is so intense. No, I'm telling you. And if they want to have a 3-minute ride on the Dodgers...
Oh, for the...
have a 3-minute ride on the
What are they going to do after Nottingham Carnival then?
Sorry, we must plod on. Coming up on the pledge, I'll be saying it's time we took a break from these. Do you remember the time long ago when we somehow managed to navigate life and perform simple tasks without the aid of our smartphones? Well, I do. Last month, even though more than half of activities of daily life now require an internet connection, I successfully survived 3 whole weeks without mine in the Big Brother house. Let's not go there. I didn't miss it one bit. A recent survey revealed how our digital obsession is destroying the simple pleasures of life. Mixtapes, photo albums, recording things on VHS. It's time to act on the addictive and destructive side of our habit and disconnect. Turn off, tune in, and wake up.
I completely agree with you, and I really do. Now, my industry I work in is technology. I've worked in that industry for years and years, and I've banged the drum for technology, and I'm a passionate supporter of it and developing it and all the rest of it. But I think that what technology is doing, social media, smartphones, to us as individuals, I actually find it pretty sad. Because if I look at the interactions I have with people and my friendships and all the rest of it, in fact, let me rewind. If I look at how many people I know that are lonely, and I mean properly lonely, because they don't have proper human connections with people
We shouldn't
anymore.
talk about Greg when he's not here.
I know.
He's terribly sad, sitting there with his one-bar fire. Do go on.
But I feel very strongly that people think they've interacted with a friend because they've liked something on Facebook or they've pinged them a message or something.
Yeah.
I've lost count of the last... In fact, I can't even remember the last time someone said to me, just turned up at my door, hello, how are you?
This sounds so terribly old-fashioned, guys. It's just like, hold on, you're sounding like Luddites. Right? Look, the printing press got invented and everyone went ballistic and said, oh, that's the devil. Look, hold on a minute, right? Let's calm down a bit. Some of the things that you've said people miss. One of them is turning the pages, physically turning the pages of the yellow blooming pages. I'm so glad we're seeing the back of those things. I mean, those yellow pages things were disgusting.
Read it anyway.
And they had all people's grubby paws all over them. And another thing that people miss, well, the other thing, dialing 1471 to see whose phone calls you've missed. I mean, I'm really glad I don't have to do that anymore. And my mobile tells me.
Can we actually look at... We've actually
Okay.
prepared an exciting graphic to show all the things that we're missing out on, which I'm going to talk you through. Making mixtapes.
Agreed.
For our loved ones.
True.
Sticking photos in our family albums. We could.
Yeah.
Recording home movies and making
Well,
our
Michelle
friends
does
watch
those
them.
on a regular basis, but they're not...
Yeah, those are for private viewing. Putting up photos that we've actually... and
lovely.
physical pictures and making home movies again.
Right, can
Hold
I
on,
just make an observation
hold on, and then we get them back from the chemist.
Yes.
Quite right, with a sticker on them.
Exactly. Now, can I just make an observation here? You two, who are saying that we should give up phones, are the only 2 people who've actually, in the break, sent text messages and been on your phone
Thank you.
constantly.
I
I
was
don't
looking at
have
the
my
post
phone
busted.
here.
I was looking at the post
No, you have it every week.
And-
you have it every...
and I
actually,
bet-
you've got yours as well.
Well, no. I didn't bring
agree,
mine in.
but
Somebody
Carol,
brought it
you
in,
didn't listen
right?
to
Because
what
she
I
wanted to
said.
see
I
it.
absolutely listen to everything you say.
What I missed in the Big Brother house was reading, listening to music.
Okay.
I didn't miss talking to people because that was all you could do. Being outside and all these things you cannot get from your smartphone.
But you're right.
can.
There is
I listen to music
It
and
shouldn't
read
replace
on my
those
devices.
things.
No, it's far more environmentally friendly not to stock up on loads of paper, otherwise known as books. So encyclopedias is another thing that people said they missed. I'm so glad we're not wasting all those trees.
All right, well,
We're
then
putting
let
them
me
on
take you
shelves.
before
we never used them.
But, OK, I accept that they have their uses, but let us hear from a motivational speaker who really thinks that that social media, which is replacing life, is really damaging us, especially our teenagers. Let's have a look from Simon Sinek.
If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, That's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted. Right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction.
That was 2016. I remember, I'll never forget my husband once saying to me, mimicking Princess Diana, he said, there are 3 of us in this marriage, Rachel, me, you, and your iPhone.
He's right.
And there are other phones that are available.
But you know, there's a much more serious problem here, and he talked about addiction, this guy, and it is an addiction. And 2 of Apple's biggest...
It is.
Can you imagine?
It's himself.
You've just had to say. So 2 of Apple's biggest investors, their £2 billion investors, have told them they have to come up with new technology, digital technology, that will stop the amount of time kids spend on the phone, because it is damaging Apple's reputation because of this addiction. There was a thing that they did some brain imaging on people who were addicted to their phones recently, and people who use Facebook, their brain scans were exactly the same people who'd abused drugs.
Can I just say,
it's the same endorphin pulse you get when you get a like or something.
Bring this back.
It's a drug. It's the same drug addiction.
The problem there, just to calm things down a bit, the problem there is the addiction to social media, not the phone, right?
No, it's both.
It's because the phone is a device used. It's a tool used to access a website that is addictive. The addictive quality of social media is the feedback loop, like gambling.
No, it's not.
It produces a drug. Hold on. It produces a drug in the brain, a bit like gambling does, that gives you the reward-punishment mechanism, right? The problem there isn't the phone. It's the site or the application people are using. And I think that we've got to... It's like we used to talk about TVs being addictive to children. Actually, all of this, I think we can deal with. We're all adjusting because we're evolving with this technology as it's developing. We can deal with it in a calm and reasonable manner. But that bloke there, on that video, sounded angry, and he sounded as if he was trying to convince himself of the problem.
He's a therapist telling a bloke he's addicted to something.
Do you disagree with what he said?
No, well, look, for example...
If you're texting whilst you're having dinner...
That thing, example, no, I don't do that, though. And actually, I'm the only one, I think, that didn't check his phone in the breaks.
Do you disagree with him?
Yes, I'll tell you where I disagree with him. When he said, you put your phone down here, and he said, even if it's face down, it means you're not as important to me as my phone. That's not true, Michelle. You're very important to me. In the old days, the telephone would still be there in the background, and it would actually ring a lot louder than this thing does with the vibrations, because it would go brrr, really and annoy everyone. So it's always been there. I just think that we're just overreacting and overcorrecting to stuff. That's my view.
Why has Nick been so quiet? What's going on?
Sorry,
Hold on a minute, love. I'm just...
He's just on his phone. Bear with.
For that.
I think Mudgie's absolutely right. I think you're railing at this great one. The problem is, of course, but maybe this is the industries in which we work, is it's all very well for us not to be switched on, and I take the point as if you're at lunch or if you're at dinner with someone. And my goodness me, my children now almost have their own families, but we never allow people to sit at dinner. You know, take that. That is an absolutely verboten. But if you are in a sort of business that we're at, you're kind of always on. Do you know what I mean? The phone goes and the radio says no, to a degree, But
I said switch off. You know, you have to be able to switch off.
But I will underscore Carol's point. She has sort of lifted the veil. The 2 of you who are immediately like sisters, nobody else on the team is on their mobile phone the same degree as you. So the idea, and I actually jokingly took it from you at the beginning of the show, and you, not jokingly, wrestled it back. There's no way you'd give me your mobile phone now.
Do you know, there's a condition called nomophobia,
which is fear of losing your phone.
Yeah, just let me ask you the thing about it. So these are the symptoms. These are the symptoms.
Oh, wow, you've got the symptoms.
You can't turn it off. Obsessively check it. You top the battery up when it doesn't need it. You take it to the toilet.
I don't have any of these.
You get fidgety when you don't have it. You never have it out of your hand.
Let me show you, as anyone that will testify that knows me outside of work, I would gladly, and I do, I go out the house. If I'm meeting someone and I'm with them, I will go out the house with that person and I will leave my phone at home.
So do you only use it when you're doing live TV shows?
No!
I think one of the things that's happening...
Honestly.
One of the things that's happening is that the beauty of this technology is it's combined a whole bunch of other things that we would have had to have a map, an encyclopedia, we would have had all these things on the table that we use simultaneously, a big fat telephone.
Yeah.
Now we've all got them in one device. So, of course, the frequency with which we're returning to that
damaging your brain
has increased because we're using it for so many different functions.
They did say that about telly.
They
did say that about TV.
But it does damage your brain. It causes neurological problems.
I do think that the social media giants, who shall remain nameless, should actually do something to rein in the feedback loop and
Yeah.
the likes and the way that at YouTube, for example,
Sean-
when you're watching Netflix, instead of saying, yeah, you finished your episode, the next one plays within
Yeah.
5 seconds. It sucks you in,
If you
and
look
you know
at an
you spend
interview-
hours on screen. There are surveys about kids of kids as young as 6 spending
Well, that's absurd.
21
That's parental.
hours a week
That's
on
parental.
screen.
That's parental.
And it used to be the same with
Parents
TV.
don't
It
know.
But
used to be
I
the same
find
with
it
TV.
interesting. There's a guy called Sean Parker that was very heavily involved in Facebook. And if you look at him online and what he now says about social media, and he says he feels that in many regards it's damaging the fabric, the structure of society.
I agree social media is.
Yeah, and I agree with him.
Problem
And I
is
am
not
a
fun.
passionate advocate for technology, but I just think it's getting in the way of general human interaction sometimes.
Time to
Social media is antisocial.
Time to power
I'll text you
down.
later and tell you what I think, yeah?
Time to power down on this debate, because in the modern age we all have to be careful about our language, even if it frustrates some of us. Carol, I am looking at you. But one world leader has taken it upon himself to make sure everyone is being politically correct. I speak of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, at a Q&A session earlier this week.
Maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we
that.
like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because
yeah.
it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Yes, that was Mr. Trudeau correcting a young woman for saying mankind instead of people kind. What is the world coming to? But for that, Mr. Trudeau, you win our state's Person of the Week award. What do we think? Groaning the loudest, Mudgie. Actually, the Canadian
Irony
national
of it.
anthem is "Oh Canada, oh Canada, oh Trudeau." Oh God.
Irony of him mansplaining to a woman to say people kind.
He didn't mean that. He was joking.
No, he's not.
No,
He
he
wasn't.
wasn't.
No, he
Rachel.
was joking,
Rachel.
surely.
I want to write about it this week. I think Justin Trudeau is too good to be Trudeau. Just too good to be.
I don't believe that was real.
It
There's
is-
no way
It is
anyone
real.
could say
But
something
that's
like that and
exactly
mean
the
it.
sort of political correctness we were talking about in today's show, where you have to watch what you say. Mankind is an accepted expression. He's an idiot. He should have not straight talker of the week, he should have plonker of the week.
Well, that's it from all the people kind here for this edition of The Pledge. We'll see you next time. Take care.